Welcome to Lunch with Legacy Leaders, a weekly talk show with local and national thought leaders discussing issues impacting the Black community. Now introducing our host, Miss Anne Marie Sorrell.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining Lunch with Legacy Leaders. I'm your host, Anne Marie Sorrell, President and CEO of the Mosaic Group. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me this afternoon for, of course, as always, an important discussion on what's happening in and around our community. Before we get started with our broadcast, I want to thank our sponsors for making this broadcast possible. Thank you to the Desmond and Dover Accident Attorneys, AARP, the Florida Lottery, FAMU Mary, and All of Us Research Program at University of Miami. Today, I am joined by Dr. Steve Gallen, who is the Vice Chair of Miami Dade County Public Schools. Welcome back, Dr. Gallen. How have you been?
I'm doing great, Anne Marie. Great to be back with you and all of our viewers. Always excited to be a part of the Legacy family. So looking forward to a very lively discussion. Hope you've been well.
I have been well, and so good to have you back on the show. So I really won't go through the bio and the introductions because you're no stranger to Legacy, and you're definitely no stranger to the Miami-Dade and South Florida community. So we're going to dive right in as we talk about, the school year has just started. Parents are, back in gear with their kids back to school and extracurricular activities and drop off, pick up, etc. But, of course, policy still happens during, before, and after the school year ends. And you and your colleagues have your hands full. And there's been so much that has happened over the last couple of years between the pandemic, different, legislation, and then more recently with some of the recent elections and appointments. So there's a lot going on at the school board level. I mean, who knew school board policy and politics was this exciting?
Yes. Anytime you have an opportunity to engage in the learning and lives of children, for me, not simply as a policymaker, but as a former practitioner. As you know, Anne Marie, I am no stranger to public education. I've been a teacher, a principal, a district administrator, a superintendent of schools. So this has been my life for the past 3 decades plus. Aside from that, I'm a parent. So I also see it firsthand with a school-age child in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So it is definitely an exciting time. It is a challenging time as well. But in education, as each and every one of us knows, it does provide a new opportunity each and every year for us to support our students, to educate them, empower them, and elevate them. And yes, absolutely, Anne Marie, we have to navigate through some of the recent legislative changes that we are facing in the state of Florida. And we're doing that as a board, I believe, quite well.
Well, let's talk about that. What you're having to navigate. So we know that there was just a recent election. So can you tell our viewers what has transpired in Miami-Dade County since the election just happened in August, since the primary?
The democratic process had its say. The voters spoke. They had an opportunity to re-elect 2 incumbents. We had one of our illustrious members to transition after almost 3 decades of outstanding service in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And we also had in the 4th race, we had a new board member that is being elected for that particular seat. So we are anticipating the swearing in of 2 new board members to the Miami-Dade County Public Schools that have been elected by the voters of those particular areas. As I said previously, the voters have spoken. I know that process quite well, having run in 2016 in the midst of change in District 1 after we had a 9-year board member. And the voters spoke, and we are looking forward to working with our new colleagues on the board on behalf of our district, on behalf of our community, but most importantly, Anne Marie, on behalf of our children. And you did mention an appointment. There is 1 seat that will be appointed according to the timeline, but no appointment has been made as of yet. The incumbent in that seat is running for a mayoral position for the city of Doral, but that appointment has not taken place.
Okay, thank you so much for that update.
I have to give a shout out. I have to give a shout out to the reelection of my colleague, Dr. Dorothy Bendros-Mendengal in District 2. Also my colleague, Ms. Maria T. Rojas, who has also been reelected. These are two lifelong educators that I've had an opportunity to not simply serve with on the board of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but I had an opportunity over the past 3 decades to serve with them as educators in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So I'm very excited about their return to the board and to help us continue to lead this district and improve the education of our children.
Thank you. What do you see as for this, last year, well, the last few years definitely have had many challenges in school systems that the school districts have had to overcome from, of course, dealing with COVID, technology, and this, online learning. And as a result, students having to learn in a different way, and then also having the equipment and access to internet, et cetera. Shortages in bus drivers, rising housing costs that impacts teachers and other faculty, and then of course legislative decisions, from the banning of books to don't say gay, all these different things, right? What do you foresee? Do you foresee any of those continuing into this new year and throughout this new school year? And how do you face those challenges as a board? And then what do you see as some of the maybe upcoming challenges that you guys may be facing as a board in this upcoming year?
So the answer to the question is yes. I do see many of the challenges being prominent as we move forward, because when you start talking about challenges that deal with the learning and lives of students, specifically academic learning challenges that have resulted in a loss of learning during the pandemic, those changes are not remediated overnight. So this will be something that is a continuous journey, a continuous progress for us to continue to reclaim and recapture those learning losses that our students faced during the pandemic. As it relates to a number of legislative changes, absolutely, they are now law. At some point, they became House bills and Senate bills, but once they're assigned by the governor, they are law, and we're obligated to follow the law. So those things, unless laws change, those things will continue to be part of the legislative policy-driven statutory landscape that we have to navigate as a board. Thirdly, we have seen a significant increase in the voice and the engagement of parents on various sides of issues. For me, as a lifelong educator, having been a principal, for example, at Holmes Elementary School right there in Liberty City, principal of Northwestern in Liberty City, parental involvement is not a new concept. Parents have always been engaged. Parents have always advocated for their children. But obviously, we have now levels of engagement that are driven by specific issues and have been elevated to the board level, obviously, through several efforts that transpire across the state, and quite frankly, Anne-Marie, that transpire across the nation. Last but not least, I think the school board has enjoyed for decades being a nonpartisan body, which we still remain. But obviously, there have been some issues that have become described or characterized as partisan. Whether or not they are, that's how they've been described. And partisanship does put all of us in a position to pick a side. What I've made a determination is that I will never, ever, ever capitulate to what I call prescriptive advocacy. Prescriptive advocacy. I want to coin that term today. No one is going to prescribe the way that I advocate for them. I look at an issue, irrespective of partisanship. I look at an issue, irrespective of politics, and I look at an issue based on what I believe in the best interest and representation of our constituents, of our community, but most importantly, of all of our children. But obviously, there's an amalgamation of all of these issues as you described, and we're just getting started.
So, I think you're in a very tough place because the reality is, like you said, more and more issues at the school board level is becoming party line based issues as of late. And I think our top leader at the state level has made some of those issues party line based issues, cultural issues, etc.
Yeah, and I still believe our board has been an exceptional school board in
Mhm.
terms of navigating through issues in a very nonpartisan, very fair, very representative manner. I still believe that politics is local. So, yes, we have an obligation to be responsive and aware and compliant with state statutes and provisions, but we also have an obligation as well and an opportunity to continue to engage our local constituents, our local stakeholders, and do the best job that we can represent their interests and the interests of their children. So it is a balancing act. It is tough, but elected office and quite frankly, public service in education has never been for the faint of heart. So I am optimistic. I remain steadfast, and I remain open about the avenue to tap into the best of who we are, not as public servants, not as elected officials, not as quote unquote politicians, but I always try to tap into the best of who we are as human beings. And I think this school board has continued to rise above that as a majority. And I look forward to us continuing to rise above any of those issues as a nonpartisan board moving forward on behalf of the children and families of Miami-Dade County Public Schools.
Absolutely. Well, that brings me to my next point, Dr. Gallen. What are some of these? We've talked about a little bit about the challenges, but I want to, let's give it a more positive approach here. And what are the opportunities? Where do you see improvements, opportunities, more programming for students, parents, for your faculty and staff? As we work to overcome some of the challenges that were mentioned before, where are the opportunities? Where are the new programs? What are some of the exciting things that are happening in Miami-Dade County Public Schools?
Well, the excitement, first of all, goes off to our teachers in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools and all of our faculty and staff that have delivered once again, and our students who have delivered once again an A rating district to the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So I think it's very important to build off success. We can always find ourselves in the doldrums of challenges, in the doldrums of division, in the doldrums of discourse and issues that divide us. But there's an opportunity for us to reflect, review, and build upon the success that is yielded once again an A rating to the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Having said that, this does give us an opportunity to fulfill our obligation to make sure that we leave no students, no schools, no zip codes behind. So while we do celebrate the A rating, we still have an opportunity and obligation to look at areas of proficiency, areas of programming, and areas of personnel. And I think we have to continue to address that in a very deliberate and strategic manner. When I talk about proficiency, yes, we have A schools and B schools and things of that nature, but to the extent that students are still not proficient in mathematics and reading, we have to continue to shore that up. With respect to programming, if we don't have equity and access relative to high quality programs from Florida City to County Line Road, we also have an obligation to address that as well to make sure that students have access. That is really what equity is about, providing access to all students. And last but not least, when we talk about personnel, we are facing a national, not a local, not a state, but a national teacher shortage. And with respect to that teacher shortage, we have to be very intentional and very supportive and very convicted in making sure that we recruit, we reward, and that we retain qualified and committed teachers for our classrooms where the core technology takes place. The voters of this community will have an opportunity once again to come in strong numbers to show the love, the support for our teachers, the commitment that we have to safety and security in our schools as we ask for their support for another round for the referendum. So we do have an opportunity moving forward to continue to build upon the success that we've realized, but also knowing that this journey is one that involves continuous improvement.
Awesome. So what is a successful 2022-2023 school year look for you, Vice Chair? Look like for you?
It looks for me where we have seen significant increases in student proficiency rates across all schools with all students in all zip codes. We are transitioning from a summative assessment at the state level, and that summative assessment is where at the end of the year you take that one test to decide whether or not your child has done well or the school has done well. Right now, the state has adopted a process in which there are formative assessments, which we describe as progress monitoring assessments that come from the state. So those assessments are given 3 times a year. So we have an opportunity to see student growth across an entire school year. What that culmination is going to look like in terms of an accountability structure, i.e., a school grade rating system that has not been fleshed out. But first and foremost, a good year will look like for me, where a student proficiency rates in reading and mathematics and all of the requisite areas have increased. I'm not talking about school grades. I'm talking about student proficiency rates have increased. I did proffer an item last year to address the achievement gap, to close that achievement gap. And we are one of the few boards in the United States that has a policy to address the achievement gap. And again, that was done in a very solidified, very collegial, and a unanimous manner that we adopted a policy to address the achievement gap. So that will be a successful year relative to student performance and achievement. The other iteration, obviously, will be one in which we are able to compensate our personnel appropriately with competitive salaries. And I'm not just simply talking about teachers who are on the front lines, but we have bus drivers that are on the front lines. We have custodians that are on the front lines. We have clerical staff that are on the front lines. And obviously, our school leaders are on the front lines as well. We've just closed many of our contractual agreements. We have seen increases there, but we still have a ways to go, and we want to continue to see those increases moving forward for our law enforcement personnel in the school system and across the board. That is why the referendum is critically important moving forward. And last but not least, a successful year is for us to continue to be a partner with municipalities, a partner with community organizations, because we can't do this work alone. A partner with families around the education and outcomes of our students. And so, to the extent that we can strengthen our partnerships as a school district with external stakeholders for the improvement, the edification, and the elevation of all, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that partnership being strengthened will be a great year for me. So I'm looking at 3 areas: pupil performance, personnel enhancements, and partnership empowerment. How about that?
I love it. That's pretty awesome. How does now I know you said engagement of parents have been up, which is great. So for parents who are out there listening, and if you are involved, kudos to you. How do you get from where you're sitting, Dr. Gallen? How do you get more parent involvement and more community involvement in um, the school system?
I think it has to start at the most critical unit of change. What do I mean by that, Anne Marie? I have said publicly at the school board level and around the country, I believe in the law of proximity. I subscribe to that tenet. That is a part of the paradigm by which I subscribe. What do you mean, Dr. Gallen, about the law of proximity? That things are impacted the greatest at the closest unit of change. So if we want to deal with the law of proximity in education, we have to get closer to the schools. Getting closer to the schools gets us closer to the teachers. Getting closer to the teachers gets us closer to the children. And the ultimate goal of a school system is to do what? Educate children. So I believe that our partnerships and our parents and our family engagement should be what I described as decentralized, not something that simply happens at the administration building, not something that happens at a school board in a very episodic moment, but something that happens on an ongoing basis. Shout out to one of my parents at Scott Lake Elementary School. On yesterday, Target on 57th Avenue and 183rd Street. The parent was leaving Target. She was leaving with boxes of paper because they had a previous open house at the school the night before, And as a part of the PTA, they asked teachers, what can we do to help you? Teachers wanted some additional paper. She was at Target buying paper to take to the schools. But what was she taking paper for? Because there was a concern about some of the books had yet to arrive. They were ordered, but they had not come in. So that increased the need for duplication. So that conversation led to not simply about paper, not simply about duplication, but the parent wanted to advocate relative to where are our books? Where are the books? And I connected that parent with the bureaucratic chief at the district level. They had that conversation, exchange information, and that was a first step for that parent to be a demand parent, to advocate for that children. And I love the conversation we jointly had relative to that, Anne Marie, and I kind of had to jump in while we were giving an explanation relative to what was happening with the books across the district. The parent says, with all due respect, I hear you. I understand what's happening at the district, but I want to know what's happening at my child's school, with my child's teacher, with my child's peers. And that is where that advocacy has to take place. And that is what is the epitome of the law of proximity, changing one school, one classroom, one instructional program, and one group of students at a time. Parents, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can to work with our schools, work with our principals, work with our teachers, but to continue to expect that we provide the best opportunities and resources for our students.
Wow, that's such a great example of parent engagement and how one thing led to another. So thank you for that.
I love Target, by the way. I like Target. As all of us do, right? Shout out to Target.
Shout out to Target. No, that's awesome. So, we're running a little short on time, but I want to give you the opportunity to just let us know about anything else that you believe our listeners would benefit from engaging with or supporting you and your colleagues in the school district with in this upcoming year.
Yeah, I believe that I told you what I subscribe to relative to this whole notion of the law of proximity, but what I never subscribe to is titular leadership. Everybody can lead because everybody can serve. So what I ask people in the community, and we're having this conversation relative to legacy leaders, it's about leadership. And it's about leadership with the home associations. It's about leadership with the PTA. It's about leadership with the unaffiliated. You don't have to be a part of a group to lead, because you don't have to be a part of a group to serve. So what I challenge our external stakeholders to do, think about what it is you can do to enhance the learning and lives of children, and how can you invest your time, your talent, or your treasure. And again, that parent yesterday was doing all three. She was investing her time in her SUV, shout out to Miss Inman. In her SUV, she was investing her talent and their treasure. They were spending money to provide resources for children. And everybody can do that at their respective locations. And that's what I ask the community to do. Find out what it is that you would like to do, go through the particular process, connect with the school in your community. I have a lot of stakeholders, Anne Marie, that want to save the world or save the district. We're a very large district. We're the fourth largest district in the nation. So when I say, okay, what is it you like to do? I would like to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would you like to do it? All over the district. Okay, who do you have? It's just me. No, that's not going to work. So you need to start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can to improve the learning and lives of our children, the support of our personnel, and the quality of our schools and our communities.
Listen, those persons must be an Aquarius. we Aquarians want to save the entire world in one, snap, one initiative. So it must be an Aquarian.
Yeah, one bite at a time. One bite at a time.
Right. Well, definitely love the work that you continue to do in our community, Dr. Steve Gallen. And we definitely appreciate you joining us on Lunch with Legacy Leaders and giving us an update of what's happening, what to expect, your priorities, as well as what you think would be a successful year this school year. And, I would like for you to leave, you left people with a call to action, but I also know that parents and others, many others, are facing their own personal challenges, whatever that may be, with inflation and everything going on. So I would love for you to leave some words of encouragement and empowerment to our listeners that are out there.
Yes, I'll do that. Before I do that, I would be remiss, Anne Marie, if I didn't add a fourth iteration. And it's sad that we have to, in our schools, in our communities, obviously, but definitely our schools, which reflected a very sacred place for our children. A great year is for all of our children to go to school and come home safe for 180 days a year. That is a sad commentary. That is a sad request. That is a sad prayer. That is a sad set of druthers that we now have to call upon for our students. When you look at Uvalde, Texas, and in certain pockets around this country, safety is a priority. So that is something that we should have always expected. That just should be a norm. But the new normal is for us to pray that our children go to school each and every day and come back safe. So I want to add that as the final request that I have for a great and successful year, because if our children are not safe, nothing else matters. So my final call to action in light of everything that we're facing is that, yes, we started out the show with many of the things that are happening at the local, state, and national level around what many describe as political division and discourse in public education, and quite frankly, in the state of affairs, whether it's housing, whether it's crime, whether it's sexuality, quite frankly, whether it's issues of economic hardships, whatever the issue is, there's a lot of division and discord that faces each and every one of us. But as I said during the course of this show, I'm not naive. Obviously, coming from Liberty City, I'm not a naive person. I've seen the best of the best and the worst of the worst. But I do believe that at the end of the day, we can find light in the most darkest places. So I just want to say, as a word of hope and optimism, that despite the noise, that despite the cacophony, the banging, the loud chatter that we see around this nation, around a myriad of issues, a woman's right to choose, whatever the issue is, there's a lot of division and discord. But despite all of that, I still believe in the God that I serve, that wakes me up each and every day, compels me to believe that the winds of possibility, they still blow. The winds of hope, they still blow. The winds of love, they still blow. The winds of optimism, they still blow, Anne Marie. The winds of solidarity and support, they still blow. The winds of unity, they still blow. I just think at a certain point in our own personal spaces, in our own reflective places, we just have to, at certain times, be silent to hear them.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better, Dr. Gallen. Thank you for this conversation today. Thank you for joining us. We always welcome you back to Lunch with Legacy Leaders. And again, thank you for the work you're doing in our community and being a great public servant as you are. So we appreciate you. And with that being said, is there a way to reach you if someone wants to reach out to you, Dr. Gallen?
They can contact my office, but I'm available. Some people have come to find out that social media is one of the best ways to reach me. I have 3 Facebook pages. You can follow me at Dr. Steve Gallen III on Facebook, Steve Gallen III on Facebook, at Doc Gallen on Twitter, the Dr. Gallen on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. But if all else fails and you want to formally reach me, I can be reached at the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, 305-995-1000. School Board Member, Dr. Steve Gallen III. And again, thank you so much. And I want to continue to salute and support and commend Legacy and your team at the Miami Media Group for the outstanding work that you're doing and the platform that you're providing for all of us to connect and communicate in ways that enhance our community. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for that. And just stay with me for just a quick moment. I just want to do a few quick announcements, and I definitely want to thank our sponsors again for making this broadcast possible. So thank you to the Mesman and Dover Accident Attorneys, AARP, the Florida Lottery, FAMU Medical Marijuana Educational Research Institute, which is FAMU Mary, and All of Us Research Program at University of Miami. Please be sure to check out all the things that are happening with MIA Media Group and our current issue at miamediagrp.com. Also, watch out for all of our shows. We have something for everyone on Mondays, The Business of Black Business at 1 p.m. with Jay Reynolds. Tuesday, My Money, Your Money at 7 p.m. with Bridgette Lumpkins. Wednesday, Soul at 7 p.m. with Nikki Jellin. Thursdays with yours truly, Lunch with Legacy Leaders at noon. And Flavor of South Florida at 7 p.m. with Chef Irie. And of course, we can't forget your health. Join us for Black Health Fridays at 2 p.m. with Dr. Michelle Kerwin. If you have enjoyed this content, please be sure, and if you didn't enjoy it, share it anyways, because somebody else can use it. Share this content with your network on your platforms, and be sure to save the date and join us again for Lunch with Legacy Leaders next Thursday. Thank you again, Dr. Gallen, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Have an amazing afternoon.
Thank you.